to homelessness. We are sitting down with an organization that is helping people change their lives and get back on the right track.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Out of Darkness Chicagoland Walk, whose mission is to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education. Volvo, designed around you. And the Respiratory Health Association, raising funds and awareness for lung disease research and programs. Special thanks to Volvo of Oak Park.
This week on the Whitney Reynolds Show, we are talking with an organization who is helping get people off the streets and back to work and free of drugs. You're watching the Whitney Reynolds Show.
You're watching the Whitney Reynolds Show.
Nellie Vasquez is a first-generation American who grew up in the Little Italy neighborhood. Nellie's vision for the safe haven grew out of the effects of alcohol in her own family's life. She joins us now with more. Tell us a little bit about the safe haven and where it kind of grew from.
Wow, where should I start? Okay.
Well, in your childhood,
yes.
You grew up, and you're first-generation American.
Yes.
You grew up around violence, and you also saw the effects of alcoholism.
You know, I did. I grew up actually in a community called Little Village in Chicago, which is pretty well known for, being gang, infested, I guess. A lot of gangs, a lot of drugs, a lot of dropouts, and I was well on my way to becoming a statistic, coming out of high school. I went to a school in Chicago that's, called Farragut High School, and thankfully I somehow got plucked out of the neighborhood and ended up going to school downtown. But I had a lot of friends that didn't make it.
So you're in this neighborhood, your friends are all, like some of them are joining up, making wrong decisions. Was there something just like in you that said, I want to do something more?
Not really. It was my parents.
Okay, so good
they got
guidance.
Wind.
Okay.
Yeah, they got wind that, I started to let my grades slip and I started to miss a few days in school. And thankfully, they got involved,
Cool.
And I actually ended up going to another high school in downtown Chicago called Jones. At the time it was called Jones Commercial, which was an all-business school.
Oh,
we
wow.
had to dress a certain way. We had we had charm school classes. There were things that they were preparing us for to really work in the business world, which for me was a complete culture shock. But when I went to Jones Commercial, I started to really turn my life around.
And so your parents intervened, they get you into a new school,
Right.
And then just like your parents intervened for you, you've intervened in the lives of so many. And so out of your upbringing grew this love for helping people because you saw how easy it was to fall into these different categories. How did you start a safe haven?
Well, I will say that, but not right away. Okay, so
Right. It wasn't like you were in high school and you're like, I'm starting this. So it took a little bit of time. Tell us about the backstory.
But I want to tell you, one thing that I think opened my eyes to the idea of homelessness was that Jones Commercial at the time was right next door to a homeless shelter. So after school and on the holidays, I used to just walk right next door to the homeless shelter and I would volunteer there. So I was aware that there was something going on and there was this, underground, population that really nobody was paying attention to, and I just happened to be aware of it because my school was right next door. And it wasn't an organized volunteer program. It was just something that struck me. I would see these guys every day going into the class, into school. So I guess I just kind of filed that in the back of my mind, not really thinking much about it. So fast forward, I do have another intervention. I wasn't planning on going to college. I was qualified, but I wasn't planning on it. I am the fourth child out of 7 children in my family. None of my other siblings went to college. In our family, when you graduated high school, the next step was you go to work and you start helping out the family.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
Pay bills. So that was the way it was planned. So when my friend of mine, was applying for college, her mother asked me what schools I was applying to, and it was actually my girlfriend's mother that was appalled to hear that I was not applying and took it upon herself to make sure that I was applying to the same schools her daughter was applying to. So out of nowhere, so she was a guardian angel, and thankfully she had some resistance from me, but she won.
She again, yeah.
She won, and that's how I ended up going to college. So now I'm in college, and I meet a guy. And this guy is, a friend, and returned, from the military when we met. And he happened to have a little bit of a drinking problem. And he worked, we both worked, and he worked at the Board of Trade at the time. And thankfully, he had a boss that noticed that he had a drinking problem. And his boss said, go get some help. So he did, and he'll tell you his story. And but when he went to get the help that he needed, mind you, I was working full-time, I was going to school full-time, and I was the one that he asked to help him go through this.
Wow.
And of course, I had to, right? So, and for me, it was a real learning experience to understand what someone who has these types of problems goes through, what families go through, because I was not only with him, but we were in other, visiting with other families and learning their experience from their experiences. And it just seemed to us, that this is a situation or a problem that if people don't have access to help, to treatment, that it's very easy to spiral out of control. And those people that I was volunteering to help in high school, many of them suffered from these types of issues, and they ended up, in a homeless shelter, or they ended up getting arrested and in jail, and or they ended up dead, which is ultimately what happens when someone has a drug or alcohol problem and don't get help. So as we got married, after that, of course, he went into recovery, and it was a complete transformation for him, and it was exciting to see that this wonderful person was behind all that. And so you fast forward, we're both working in the world of finance, and thankfully we had a lot of success very early on in our careers, and we decided that we wanted to give back.
That is so neat, and that is where Safe Haven was born. What year was that?
It was 1994.
And the Safe Haven's mission is almost exactly what you were saying in all these little stories, the glimpse of the mom that said, no, we're gonna put you in a different high school. The other mom that intervened and said, no, you're gonna go to college, and then going to college, and then you saying to your husband, we're gonna go get help. I mean, this is crazy because all these little things added up to kind of the bigger story. And that's what I find amazing about the Safe Haven, is there's like things in all of our lives that can seem like oh, it could have gone this way or that way, but it turns into a much bigger story. So tell us about the Safe Haven, just the mission of it.
Okay, so when we started a Safe Haven, it really was something that came out of us wanting to give back, but we wanted to give back to a cause that was personal, that meant something to us. And there's a lot of causes you can choose from. We both had cancer in our families, we both had diabetes in our families, and those are causes that we could easily written a check for and said, okay, take care of that. Right. But what was personal to us was the fact that I came from a poverty-stricken situation, and thankfully there was divine intervention in our lives, and it led me in a completely different trajectory. And there was divine intervention in his life, to get him to where he needed to go to avoid falling down that slippery slope. So we felt that there were a lot of people that didn't have the opportunity that we both had in our lives, to get to where we are. And we thought it was important to give access to people that didn't have access to treatment, to housing, to supportive services. And when we did our research and we looked at the landscape of all the different charities that are doing important work in helping the homeless, we found organizations that fed the homeless. Right. We found organizations that provided a bed for them to sleep in. And for us, we didn't see a lot of satisfaction in helping people have a meal that's going to satisfy them for the next 3 hours, or have a place to sleep that's going to give them a place, for the next few hours to sleep in. How do we solve it, is what we said. We wanted to make sure that if we were going to help somebody, we wanted to see it through. We wanted to see it from beginning to end, right? Can we get them from being homeless, if we provided them the right wraparound services, if we connected them to job training and jobs and permanent housing, what would that look like? Now we're talking about really making a difference in someone's life. And as we were looking out at the landscape, we couldn't find anything, so we decided to do something ourselves.
I love that. And we're going to find out everything you are doing when your husband comes and joins us. It's now time for the social sizzle. And this week we have a video explaining more of what the Safe Haven is all about.
We got evicted from our 3-bedroom apartment.
I'm a former U.S. Marine, homeless veteran.
I just felt like everything was going in circles.
I have been addicted to heroin for 25 years.
Here in the United States, 1 in 5 people struggle with life in poverty, while millions end up homeless every year. These individuals are not strangers. They are our families, our youth, our seniors, and our military veterans. They have fallen victim to unemployment, catastrophic medical expenses, domestic violence, or the disease of substance abuse. America pays a high price for homelessness. Billions of dollars are spent on public safety, welfare, emergency health care, criminal justice, and incarceration. Since 1994, a safe haven addresses the root causes and solves these issues for almost 5,000 people a year, one person at a time. Their problem is our problem, and together we can do better. A safe haven's unique, holistic, and individualized approach begins with the end in mind. This model enables people to aspire, transform, and sustain their lives with basic human needs like food and housing, while opening doors to services like treatment, education, healthcare, and access to jobs and affordable housing so that they can live in a sustainable manner with their pride and purpose restored. The vision of a safe haven is that the people of every major city in America have access to a place that can help as soon as their social and economic need arises. We give Americans in crisis a one-stop shop that allows them the opportunity to retreat, rebuild, and emerge as positive, productive members of society. Join us on our journey of building a better America.
We want you to join the conversation on today's topic. Make sure to tweet us at Whitney Reynolds. Our next guest, James Robinson, was personally impacted by a safe haven after nearly dying and becoming homeless. Let's welcome out James. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been personally impacted by a safe haven.
Yes.
Tell us about what got you into the facility.
What got me into Safe Haven when I have congestive heart failure. I was hospitalized for a year at Rush University Medical Center, and I died and came back to life. And so when I got from being released from the hospital, I didn't have nowhere to go. I lost my apartment and, you know, my job. I didn't have no job. I was currently a truck driver. And so I had got referred by a friend about Safe Haven. And I didn't want to try, but I met a guy at the front desk. He worked at the front desk security. And he said, young man, he said, I know that you're fearful, you're scared, but you're going to be okay. This place is going to help you. And so I went home. I called 2 days, and Miss Deborah Rory called me back. She said, Mr. Robinson, I have bed space for you. And I was just actually jumping up and down. I was just so excited to be there. And I've been there now for a month. And being there has helped my life, changed my life tremendously.
So what has the transition looked like for you?
It's been great. I have a front desk job. Since I've been there, I've been attending drug meetings. And it's just been great. Miss Nellie and Mr. Brian, they've just been so helpful towards me. I can talk to them about anything. They have compassion for the people. And you don't find that in most shelters.
I think it's hard for anybody, no matter what you're going through in life, to trust new people.
Yes.
And here your life is now in their hands.
Yes. Yes, it was hard for me to trust. I never had no one to really, I can really trust. So it was great to trust them, and you know, they've been very trustworthy.
Where do you think your life would be right now if you didn't find a safe haven?
Oh Lord, I'd be sleeping on Parkway benches.
You really think
Sleeping
so?
on Parkway benches, becoming a criminal. You know, just being.
And you say that because you were almost there.
I was almost there. I was at the breaking point of my life, very at the breaking point of my life. But Safe Haven was there for me. Wow. I got that call, and they was there. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I feel blessed to be here. Thank you.
It's now time for the viewer's voice, and this week's question is, how does your neighborhood care for the homeless?
I think my neighborhood cares for the homeless in a very good way. I don't exactly know what resources are available in our neighborhood. However, I do know that we don't see a lot of folks on the street. There are a few areas within our neighborhood that do cater to the homeless. There's a few shelters, and I do know that there's a goodwill within our neighborhood as well, too.
My neighborhood cares for the homeless in a variety of ways. I don't know a lot about it, but I just know my own personal experience. And I have actually helped and cooked meals and at a place called, it's actually called Deborah's Place. And I've done a little bit of that, and I've volunteered in certain areas, so I know that there are options for the homeless.
I've been noticing lately that our neighborhood does a lot for the homeless. Some of them, not everybody. Some people kind of ignore them, but we give money at every traffic light if we can. I noticed that people make care packages lately with scarves and gloves, toothpaste, toothbrushes, and then they keep them in their car. So if you come across anybody that is in need for any reason, you just give it to them.
Full disclosure, I'm not really sure because I'm not aware of like specific programs in the neighborhood, but I will tell you that I don't see a lot of homeless people in the street, so I'm feeling like they must be doing a good job of caring for the homeless. I know there's a couple of shelters as well close by, but all in all, the neighborhood feel, you don't really see a lot of homeless people on the street.
Well, my neighborhood, they don't care for the homeless. There are no programs or anything set in place as far as shelters or anything. They roam the streets, and no one cares for them. They do, like some of the other homeless, they pedal and things like that. Yeah, they don't care for the homeless.
The suburb that I live in now, for better or for worse, doesn't really care for the homeless. I think there are definitely homeless people in the town that I live in now, but it's not as visible as when I lived in the city. I mean, in a major city like Chicago, there are a lot of resources. I've done social work and counseling at my previous jobs where I could list 100 organizations in Chicago, shelters, food pantries, mental health organizations that I could send anybody to. But the suburb that we live in now, sort of northwest of the city, there isn't really that same visibility. Like, you don't get people panhandling under overpasses the way you do in the Loop. And so I think in that suburb, people aren't really aware of the resources that are out there.
I would say that my neighborhood does an okay job caring for the homeless. And I say that because a lot of times when you're driving, you do see a lot of people maybe on the side of the road or just walking by that need help, and we're willing to give them that help. But I don't think that we do enough as far as planning and really trying to see if these people have facilities to go to. So it's more so half and half. We could do better, but we do just enough, I guess, for the day.
From homelessness to drug addiction, Nellie and her husband Brian have been the hands and feet in helping people clean up their lives and get back on the right track. However, it doesn't stop there. They've also helped people get back to work. Let's welcome them both here now to explain more. Welcome to the show, Brian, and welcome back, Nellie.
Thank you.
So I want to find out more about how you guys are really developing out the social business enterprise and getting people back to work. But first, I know in your segment, you mentioned earlier a little bit about the back history of it. And Brian, I want to not only welcome you to the show, but talk about just where the love for the Safe Haven really grew from. Was it your personal experience with alcohol?
Yeah, it was through my personal experience in overcoming alcoholism 25 years ago that I had the idea of giving back and helping, and it kind of took a life of its own and grew into something significant, which today we help about 5,500 people a year. 5,500 people a year. That is absolutely amazing. You know, we just heard from one of them, and we saw, you know, just the faces that you are helping here in Chicagoland is really just amazing. So tell us about the social business enterprise. Well, social business enterprises are the businesses that we operate to help our residents become employees. So we run a number of businesses, most significant being landscaping. We're well known for doing the marquee properties downtown, Michigan Avenue, Sales Street, Rooftop City Hall. What people really realize is those are job training programs for our population. A lot of our population that we serve are people who, just like I went through, are in transition in their life, and they have challenges with either drugs and alcohol or gaps in their work history or have criminal background where it's hard for them to become employed. So we employ them in our businesses, which is easier for them to get a job in another business because they learn how to be employees.
So whenever you employ them, they're actually able to make money. Are they working for their bed? Like, how does that work?
Oh, no, they get paid.
They get paid.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's hard if you've been an addict to be able to get your first job again, because people will look at your history or a drug test or whatnot, and so it might be hard to get that first initial one. Is that right?
It's absolutely true. So these businesses came out of a real need. So as we started a safe haven and providing these wraparound services for people where they can have a roof over their head and get all the social services, they hit a brick wall when it came to employment. Right. So we had to think of a way to create jobs that will give them a job skill, give them a work ethic, help them make money, right, as they're rebuilding their lives. And the beautiful thing is, it's getting something on their resume now. So when they are ready to go into the mainstream workforce, they have some work experience and they've got a work ethic, and they make wonderful employees, because the beauty of having these job training programs and these businesses, it gives us an opportunity to really help them learn how to be good employees and what it takes to work in a business, and what it takes to manage your money, and what it takes to be successful in the business.
So you were saying earlier that you saw all these different organizations that helped either like the homeless or they gave them a meal, but this was really like one-stop shop to get them fully back. Is there another step that we see in the future for you guys, or do you think you've kind of solved the piece to the problem?
We solve the problem for thousands of people every year, we do, but the problem is bigger than what we can do. So the future really is in terms of scaling, so we have, this incredible model that we've designed. We call it a vertically integrated ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So we can assess anybody that walks in the door socially to find out why they're in crisis, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's drug or alcohol addiction, or whether it's just flat out job loss, right? Or, as you heard from James, a medical expense, or a setback. So assessing them there, assessing them physically, just to making sure that they're okay health-wise. We have nurse practitioners there that help do that. We also have the ability to assess them academically. So if there's people that have dropped out of high school, we can help them get their GEDs. If they graduate from college, then clearly they can bypass that piece, right? Wow. And then finally, we assess them employment-wise. So what kind of work history do they bring to the table? What do they want to do? And how can we connect them to the type of job training or the type of job that they want and they need and can potentially be successful in? So the whole goal with us is really about really putting people on the path that's going to lead them to sustainable independence, and that's what we do. So we have about 40 developments. So as we create the job piece, as we talked about with the social enterprises, the final piece was housing. The same reasons they can't get jobs are the same reasons they can't get housing. So we actually have supportive housing, affordable housing, senior housing, and military family housing that we just opened up in Melrose Park. We've got 35 homes we just opened there. So again, where are we going with this? Figuring out what is the root cause of that problem, and let's get them in a situation where we can solve it for them long term. This has huge ramifications. If we're able to scale what we're doing right here in Chicago into outlying suburban areas that are facing some of the same challenges to other cities and other states, it's doable. We've been doing this for 22 years. So it's just a matter of having the will and the interest and the business community really behind it, because we can't do what we do without partners.
And it's, I mean, the government, you're probably saving the government tons of money here because you're cleaning up the streets. I mean, that is absolutely amazing with everything you're doing. Any final thoughts for you, Brian, that you want us the viewers to know?
Well, I think it's all about giving back. I mean, someone helped me, and helping, if everyone just really helped one person or as many as they can, it would change so much in our world. The violence, the poverty, I think it's all attributed to really, I meet people every day that you really wouldn't normally think to approach, and you show them a little affection and interest, and they come alive. And a lot of people just don't get that from the get-go, and it's really amazing when you learn about who they are, where they grew up, and what their challenges are, and you give them an opportunity, and they grasp it and run with it.
Wow.
And I think if we all think that way, we can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming on.
Well, thank you for having
you.
us.
Today we've looked at real situations that plague our cities like homelessness and addiction. The good news is there's always hope. Like we've seen with today's guest from A Safe Haven, take a look at your own life. If you don't like something that's been written in, there's always room to edit. For more information on today's show, visit WhitneyReynolds.com.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Out of Darkness Chicagoland Walk, whose mission is to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education. Volvo, designed around you. And the Respiratory Health Association, raising funds and awareness for lung disease research and programs. Special thanks to Volvo of Oak Park.